Welcome to Creative Cooking. Today we're making steak and cheese pies using shaved steak. We have some milk, some beef broth, and American processed cheese. And we're using puff pastry shells, so you don't have to make a pie dough. Let's get started. We'll start with the pastry shells. When you get them out of the box, you just want to keep an eye out for the embossed side. That is to say, this side. That's the side that has to be up. They just snap apart, and you just space them evenly on a sheet. Then you just pop them in an oven, 425 degrees for 18 to 20 minutes per the package directions. As for the steak, you'll see that it's paper thin, and it comes from rather large pieces of steak, I would imagine. So I use kitchen shears to cut them up. It makes it easier to cook, and it'll make it a lot easier to distribute the meat and cheese mixture throughout the shells. I would normally make this by browning some mushrooms in that butter, but my wife doesn't like mushrooms. So instead, I'll be using some onion. And I'll saute those until they just start to caramelize. Although you can caramelize them completely if you'd like to, it's not necessary. Then you throw in the steak. And the steak cooks rather quickly because it's thin, and we've broken them up into smaller pieces. And we'll season that with a little bit of fresh ground black pepper and a little bit of salt. But you have to be parsimonious with the salt because American processed cheese is salty to begin with. And we are going to put some salty broth in there. So go easy on the salt. Meanwhile, these are finished baking, so we want to cool them off on one of these cooling racks. I was a little disappointed that some of them didn't puff up the way they're supposed to, but that's just the way it is. It'll still work and they'll still be delicious. So now I'm adding some beef broth, and that's just for flavoring more than anything else. And I'm also going to add some milk. Now I probably should have reduced this a little bit to concentrate the flavors, but it's going to turn out just fine and you'll see why. The little bit of milk and that broth is so we can melt the cheese. We want to create basically a cheese sauce or a sort of gravy cheese sauce, so to speak. And it's actually quite good. Now I started off with about 5 slices of cheese, but quickly realized that I should have added some more, so I added 2 more slices of cheese, just to make sure that I had enough cheese, and then I wanted to test to see how thin or how thick that gravy was turning out to be. So after a bit I realized that I put too much liquid in there, and I could have done a couple of things. I could have reduced it, or I could thicken it. What I decided to do to fix that problem was to add some cornstarch and mix it in with just a little tiny bit of water, and mix it in just like you would a gravy. It thickens on contact, and it'll change the viscosity of that just enough that you don't have to thicken it any further, because after you remove it from the heat, it'll just naturally thicken on its own. So that's about how you want it to look, and then just take it off the heat and let it cool down just a little bit before you fill the shells. Now the shells, you just have to pull out that little top that was on the bottom, well actually on the top. It comes out pretty easy, and you can see that it's nice and tender on the inside, but these things are nice and crispy on the outside. I'll show you how one looks right there. It actually holds quite a bit. And you can make desserts with these too. You don't have to make a savory pie. So go ahead and fill up your pies, and each one will take about 2 of those soup spoons full, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, depending on how they rise. And then of course you can serve them this way, or you can go ahead and put the little cap right back on top. So it actually does qualify as a pie, because the filling is completely surrounded by pastry. These came out very good, and we enjoyed them very much, and I hope you do too. If you'd like to learn how to make French meat pie or some spinach and cheese croissant, check out these 2 videos up on the screen. Thanks for watching, and bon appetit.